Thank you very much. So, I want to tell you a little bit about what I think is most interesting with blockchain. And it is that you can build unstoppable applications. So, for example, if I want to do a Bitcoin transaction and send some Bitcoin to you, there's no one who can stop me from doing that. And in the same way, if I want to run some code on the Ethereum blockchain network, no one can stop me from doing that either. And why is that? There's no way to stop the resources that flow into these networks. We call them miners, but they are really resource providers that provide the calculation capacities, the storing capacities that these networks need. And just because they are so decentralized, there's no one who can stop this resource flow. If you stop one miner, there's 100 other miners standing in line waiting. So, what do I really mean by unstoppable? So it's true that there are some things that you need to have in place for creating an unstoppable use case. You need to have something that brings value to the network, like the Bitcoin transactions. If no one wants to do a Bitcoin transactions, no one will pay the miners and the network will stop. You also need to have a use case when you don't have a third-party dependence. So if I want to transact my Bitcoin to you, we are the only the involved parties. That's the perfect use case. So why does an energy provider like Fortum care about these unstoppable applications? This is a picture from one of Fortum's solar power plants in India. And in 2 hours, the Earth gets all the energy we need for a full year. So in these power plants, we have an abundance of energy if we just can capture it. And the most interesting thing with this technology is that it is very efficient if it's decentralized. So if you put up one of these panels on your villa, if your villa is in India, you will get as much energy as Fortum will in our big power plant from that panel. So there's no kind of scaling benefits in this business, and this is totally new for energy. So the question is, do we have an unstoppable use case in the energy peer-to-peer energy sales? So if you put a solar panel on your roof, and then you would like to sell this energy to someone else. And unless that sounds like a really nice thing, like you get energy without an energy company. That's very efficient. But unless you want to sell this energy to your neighbor and you have your own connection, you have a problem with distribution. So you would need a grid owner, local grid owner, a transmission responsible. So you have a third party that you're working with to distribute the energy. So we're basically like back in the late 80s. I don't know if you remember, the home video cameras were suddenly kind of cheap and good enough so that people could start using those. And there was this show, America's Funniest Home Videos. So because there was a possibility for people to create their own content, but there was no possibility for them to distribute that content. So they needed to use the big TV companies to distribute what they created. And it's the same situation here with the energy, that you can create the energy, but you can't distribute it. So we're in a situation in energy before the internet, before YouTube, where you can distribute your content. So still, this use case has this third-party dependence. Unless we have the storage revolution up and coming, It's a very nice picture of Fortum's Batcave battery. It's a huge battery here in Finland, in Järvenpää, but I will speak a little bit more about Tesla because that's the more common battery that you would know about. So Tesla, they have this Powerwall battery that you can put up on your wall. It's 13 kilowatt hours, and that basically means that I can run my apartment for 2 days on the content in that battery. If I would park a Tesla Model S on outside of my house and connect it to my apartment, I could run my apartment for 2 weeks. And if I would park one of the big new Tesla semi-trucks, I could probably run my apartment for 3 months. So this sounds kind of promising, doesn't it? I could kind of disconnect my apartment from the grid, park the semi-truck outside. I will run for 3 months, then I would disconnect it for maybe a couple of hours. It would go and recharge and come back, and then I could run for another 3 months. It could work. What I haven't told you is that my apartment is quite small, and it's also not heated by electricity, it's district heating. So if we instead talk about my boss's house, this Powerwall battery would only be working for 5 hours, and the Model S would only hold out for 1.5 days. And even with the semi-truck on his driveway, it would only last for 9 days. So even if it's possible for him to put solar panels on the roof to create all the energy the house would need for a year, the problem is that most of the energy would be produced in the summer and most of the use would be during the winter. So he would need to have 25 Tesla semi-trucks parked on his driveway to store all the energy for the winter. And even though it's a nice house, it's not that big. So what has Fortum done so far? We have tested something that is actually an unstoppable use case that works already today. It's about charging electric cars. So you put up your charging pole on the blockchain, and if you own a car, you can go and charge your car and pay for it over the blockchain. So this picture is from last week. Some of my colleagues, when we, together with several other utilities in Europe, did a tour with EVs charging and paying through blockchain. And this actually works already now. But what we have learned from this test and other tests when we have been working with blockchain and consumers is that there are some psychological tricky questions. So the first thing is the ecosystem cooperation. How do these big utilities that I showed in the last picture work together? That's something that we haven't done before. So, and how do we work together with the consumers? So that's something that we need to learn more about. We also have the immaturity of the consumers. They don't know enough about blockchain to feel happy and content with doing their transactions with Bitcoin. And if Bitcoin has one value this week, it has another value next week. So it's scary. We have also tried these fiat currencies. When you connect cryptocurrency to, like the euro, for example. You have a euro token, it's always valid €1. That's easier for the customers, but on the other hand, then you end up going into banking. And as many of you know here, banking is heavily regulated, and yeah, that's a little bit scary, at least for an energy supplier. And also with all the cryptocurrencies, there is this crypto wallet, so the consumers need to put their money into the wallet and they don't have all the money on the bank account, and that feels a little bit insecure. So in the afternoon, I will run one of the workshops when we will try to solve some of these problems. So please come and join me. We definitely need some fintech help to look into these issues. Thank you.